Hey guys, thanks for checking out the channel. Tobin here with you, and it is a game week for the Miami Dolphins. The NFL is going to be back in full force this week. You open up on Thursday, and then we got ourselves a full-on slate coming up on Sunday, and very much looking for a fun matchup to start the season, man. Fun matchup. Dolphins and Chargers to get this thing kicked off this week and this season. And look, it's always got a little bit of juice to it, right? Like, first of all, you got the Tua Herbert thing. That's never not going to be a sexy matchup. It's never not going to be a matchup that's tied. I mean, when you have two guys who were taken in back-to-back picks, and especially I think with Herbert being, I think, more the unsung guy in the draft. I mean, in a very, very good quarterback draft. I think when people were looking at him, he was the bridesmaid, right? He was the consolation prize, but then immediately kind of flew like a swan. Like, everybody fell in love with him immediately with the numbers that he was putting up, the huge arm. And, Tua obviously didn't have as smooth a start. He had a coach who was, sabotaging him. He obviously had a little bit more of injury hurdles to overcome. He didn't really have, any locker room veteran quarterbacks, kind of putting the negative vibes on him. I mean, quite the opposite. It seemed like he had a team doctor sabotage so he could get his career off to a faster start. But it's impossible not to always think of this matchup and think about those guys going in back-to-back picks. I think that's a ridiculous thing to never think that. It's a ridiculous notion that's until one of them like really flames out. It's going to be, I think, one of those fun things that those guys will have forever. I really do. I think that's going to be one of those things that will be talked about their entire career. And I think that the thing that was interesting with last year's matchup, why it got to a lot of people, was the Miami Dolphins. I think for the first time in their careers, Tua and Herbert kind of appeared like they were going in opposite directions. You had the Chargers, who in that game were kind of reeling. They lost 3 out of 4, 500 team basically. Kind of just going through the motions, a little bit banged up. The hot shot Justin Herbert with his arsenal of Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Those guys are too banged up to be elite receivers anymore. And then you have Tua and Tyreek and Waddle kind of lighting up the league. I think the Dolphin fan really was going into that game licking their chops, even with what had just happened against San Francisco. You're like, that was a little blip. You figured you were going to waltz into that game. It wasn't going to be a crazy atmosphere. You figured it was going to be a Sunday Night Football with the LA Chargers. How many fans do they have, right? And the Dolphins got fat-catted, man. They waltzed into that game and played like fat cats. And really, for the first time, you were left scratching your head a little bit for the season and being like, well, what the hell? Like, you know that you had the great start, and then you knew you had Tua's adversity. But this was the real first time in the season. Tua was back. You had all your main players. There really weren't any excuses or really legitimate reasons as to the struggles. And I think it left a lot of Dolphin fans flummoxed. And I think you probably look back at last year, and that's still the most perplexed you are at a result all year, just because they did just a tremendous job of slowing up the Dolphins' just killer passing attack. And I think, specifically Jalen Waddle, that's the one where you're like, you'll go to that West Coast trip and you'll kind of look at, Jalen Waddle's game logs from last year, and you'll just kind of like tilt your head to the side and be like, well, what happened there? Like, where did Jalen Waddle go? Where was he and all this? Because as like Tyreek didn't maybe have like his most dominant game, you could like look at the stat sheet. If you don't, the only reason the Dolphins had a chance in that game was because of Tyreek Hill, because he had that crazy ass fumble Rooski play, which I was just watching that before I hopped on camera today, and I'm still like flummoxed by it. I don't, he just, the ball batted right to him, and Cheetah takes off. And then you have, of course, the 60-yard bomb, which kind of made every Dolphin, I think, kind of perk up out of the seats. I remember I was at this game. I was watching it at we were doing a watch party for it. I think it was at like Keg South and Kendall or something like that. And we all thought, like, once that touchdown happened to Tyreek, we're like, this thing's going to be a wrap. They're going to get it. And it just, you got to credit the Chargers because they did a great job of dictating a few things in this game. I mean, they dictated really the time of possession. I mean, you had an exhausted Dolphins defense for a couple of weeks in a row, and they had the ball for nearly twice the time that the Dolphins did in that game. And all of their main players just really showed up. I mean, between Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Justin Herbert was a boss in that game, man. I mean, you think to that play to Tyreek Hill, I think the next possession they got down to Mike Williams like right away. And so, yeah, there has to be a level of, for the Dolphins fan, feeling like they can get this thing off on the right foot by writing what really felt like the most perplexing loss of the season last year. Because I think if the Dolphin fan could probably look to, hey, you lose to San Francisco, they're one of the best top to bottom, and you really didn't even feel like as snuffed out by them as this game. This game was just, I think, just the most perplexing out of all of them. Buffalo, the team bounced back nicely against Buffalo. That was a really competitive game on the road, bad weather. And then Green Bay, you just had kind of the complete unraveling of Tua. We later learned that he has the concussion. So that one, I think, was a little bit more explainable. This one is just one of those where you're just looking back, you're just like, man, what happened there? Like, what? Why did that thing go down the road that it did? Mike McDaniel was asked about it, and that Chargers defensive performance. This is what he had to say on that.
It wasn't like they reinvented defense. It was more that their guys understood their issues in each individual coverage and really played in a competitive spirit. I thought there was a lot of 50-50 balls that went the way of the Chargers last year, and I just really thought overall that the team itself took that game with seriousness, and you could see a unit that was well coached and well schooled at the opposing team's offense in this case. So I just thought they were very competitive and did a very good job challenging things that we were trying to do that particular game.
And then also you have the situation like in this game, like Dolphins were usually very good last year. If Jives got off to kind of a rocky start, they could usually kind of erase that, but they did such a good job with the Dolphins on third down. Simultaneously, I mean, this is probably the game I think that did in Josh Boyer for a lot of Dolphin fans are just like kind of confused. Although I will say this isn't really a Boyer thing, but you did have probably the most erroneous roughing the passer call of the season with Jalen Phillips just doing nothing but tackling legally Justin Herbert, and they ended up throwing a roughing the passer call. Just crazy. I saw Jalen Phillips today at a charity event, but my instinct was to just lean in and be like, still can't believe that roughing. But I'm sure he's gotten plenty of that, so I just decided to let him go about his day. But like it feels like that should be the way you always introduce yourself to Jalen Phillips. If you were to ever see him at like, I don't know, a quarter deck or a Publix, you just be like, that wasn't roughing the pass around Justin Herbert. Just so you know, he knows that we all have in solidarity, we're all thinking the same thing, and that is that wasn't roughing the passer on Justin Herbert. So that was, and they stole a sack from him. Quite frankly, they stole a sack from him. But this is the rubber match between Herbert and Tua. Tua, of course, he won the first showdown, I believe, when they were both rookies. They faced each other, and that was a game. Was that Tua's first start? I think that might have been Tua's first start. Looking back on it, I think 2020. Tua, it was like his third start. He had but he did win that matchup. They won 29-21, and Justin Herbert cut his hair after that game, I believe. Cut his hair. So Tua's definitely going to go and look to see if he can get that performance going again. And Justin Herbert's going to have to go to the barber after this one, of course. And then you, of course, also have the idea that you have this rude Chargers team that had Mike McDaniel vaping in their anime schedule release. Mike McDaniel asked about that today at practice.
Mike, since you opened against the Chargers and since they put out a video in the offseason, and since I don't think you asked about it, what was your reaction to that vaping video? I never.
Huh? I don't know what you speak of. The schedule release. Hey, a lot of creative people doing creative things in 2023, which is pretty creative.
Grow up, Chargers. I mean, I know you don't everybody still thinks you're in San Diego and you're like the other team that nobody cares about in that market, but just you think that's funny? You make the vape joke with your cute little anime. It's not going to be so cute when Mike McDaniel gets his revenge coming up this week. The other pieces of news that happened today, the Dolphins announced Mike White was QB2. He's going to be the backup QB. Not a huge surprise there. I really thought that Skylar Thompson probably had to blow out Mike White to get that job. Obviously, Mike White's got the salary that buoys him up. Look, this is the third year in a row the Dolphins have gone local QB as the backup guy. They did Teddy, they did Jacoby, and now it's Mike White. So maybe Broward County, and where Dade and Palm Beach had not gone together, maybe Broward County will have a little bit more success. Hopefully he has no success, honestly. Hopefully Tua's out there and I don't have to see a whole lot of Mike White other than just looking fantastic, holding a clipboard. And then the Dolphins did announce their captains today. 7 captains, all of them the same except for Landon Roberts, who is no longer with the team. He is in Pittsburgh, I believe. And so that has been replaced by Alec Ingold, which I did not find to be a big surprise. I mean, that guy is very vocal in the community. Of course, just got a contract extension. And so the other ones, Tua, Tyreek, Teron, Javon Holland, Christian Wilkins, and Xavier Howard. Those are your other captains as everybody's set for this. But it is, there's going to be a lot of talk this week. And I think almost probably to an overkill of the Dolphins thinking about what are you going to do this time around that was not done. And this could just be very much enough as the Dolphins playing a little bit more physical, beating their man, getting in better spots, because I think Tyreek said to this week, he goes, well, yeah, I probably do expect them to do the same thing. Nothing has changed. And if they had a lot of success around it, it's upon them to go out there and show that they can, make LA adjust going into this matchup. But it's one of those where you want to kind of set, obviously the setting the tone. It's not a I wouldn't call this start of the schedule. I wouldn't call it a gauntlet to start the schedule. I feel like last year's, you're like, damn, that was a rough start, even with more of the games being at home, because let's be honest, starting on the road week 1 in LA, not a primetime game, not the most daunting. I'm sure going to New England is going to be a crazy atmosphere. Even with Tua's great record against Bill Belichick, that's going to be a divisional matchup. That's always going to be a tough one. Their defense is usually really, really good. But yeah, Dolphins getting off to this good start with all these road games to start the month. I think it is imperative for them, and there'll be more elements to kind of break down as the week goes on. But obviously, Mike McDaniel is going to get asked a lot about it in this coming week, and I'm sure it'll be interesting to hear what both sides have to say about that interesting, crazy, head-scratching performance from the Dolphins, a real stinker against LA that, look, they were ultimately able to overcome and still get to the playoffs. But I think when you look back at last year and you're like, damn, what the hell happened in that 5-game losing streak? That's always going to be looked upon as the game where you're just like, what? Like the Chargers? Like the Chargers who were reeling at that time? What happened there? And it really kind of set the slide going until they were able to salvage things in the final week of the season.